Hello everyone, welcome back to Oni-chan. Today, Oni brings you a heartwarming anime. One that's incredibly meaningful. The story revolves around Toru. He's a ruthless high-ranking member of the Sakuragi family. Toru is nicknamed the Demon of Sakuragi because of his aggressive and emotionless personality. At this point, Toru has gone too far with his behavior. So the boss of the Sakuragi family decides to punish him. He assigns Toru a difficult task. Toru must take care of the boss's daughter. From this moment on, Toru will have to patiently learn how to be gentle in order to care for Yika, a quiet and sensitive little girl. Thus begins Toru's funny and touching journey of transformation. Let's look forward to it together with Oni-chan. This young man's name is Toru. Toru is a Wakagashira of the Sakuragi family. He is introduced as a violent and cold-blooded person. Toru easily takes down enemies in an instant. And his nickname is the Demon of Sakuragi. The guy in the car right now, his name is Sugihara. Sugihara is the leader of the Sakuragi family's underlings. He's worried about Toru's actions because Toru disobeyed Kazuhiko's orders. Kazuhiko, the boss of the Sakuragi family. Although Kazuhiko recognized Toru's abilities, this time, he gave Toru an unexpected task. Toru would take care of the boss's daughter. The girl's name is Yika. Kazuhiko believes Toru can handle anything. But what Toru lacks is a sense of responsibility. This time, as Toru takes care of Yika, it's a rare opportunity for him to learn responsibility for all his actions. He thinks this will be a difficult mission. Sugihara secretly watches from outside. He's surprised by this impossible task. At that moment, Yika is disappointed because her caregiver isn't her aunt, but instead, it's Toru. Taking care of someone is extremely difficult for Toru. Suddenly, Sugihara notices how clumsy Toru is. He teases Toru because it's amusing. Sugihara never expected Toru to struggle with a little girl. At that moment, Toru doesn't forgive Sugihara easily. So Toru ties his hair up, making Sugihara embarrassed by Toru's revenge. In the end, Kazuhiko gives Toru a warning. He'd better not cause any trouble related to Yika. On the way to school, Toru tries to start a conversation with Yika, but she stays completely silent. Just then, two suspicious strangers appear from behind. Turns out, they're enemies from Toru's past. Right now, the two are plotting to attack Toru. However, Toru notices them immediately, so he comes up with a way to distract Yika. At the same time, Toru takes out both strangers swiftly. But Yika doesn't understand what just happened, which makes her feel uneasy. Yika secretly looks at a mysterious piece of paper in her room. Suddenly, Toru walks in from outside, causing Yika to hurriedly hide it. Eventually, Toru notices something's up, but he doesn't know exactly what it is. At that moment, Konami comes to visit Yika before work. She's the aunt who used to take care of Yika. So after seeing her aunt, Yika becomes cheerful again. But after a while, Yika's expression returns to normal. Konami becomes curious about Yika's gloomy face. However, neither Sugihara nor Toru knows the reason. Because whenever Konami is with Yika, they always seem happy together. Even though Yika isn't good at expressing her emotions. Before coming here, Konami had prepared Yika's favorite dish. But unexpectedly, Yika showed a sad expression, leaving Konami unsure of what had happened to her. At that moment, Toru might have sensed something. It turns out Yika secretly hid a parent-teacher meeting invitation that morning. But they didn't know the reason why. Then Konami revealed she had also received such an invitation from Yika in the past. But she couldn't attend because she was busy with work. Even though Yika didn't say anything, Konami noticed she seemed a little sad. Eventually, everyone understood what was going on. So the two of them came up with a plan to make sure Yika wouldn't be disappointed. At school, Yika felt left out because her classmates were all accompanied by their parents. Suddenly, Toru appeared beside her, catching her completely by surprise. People around them whispered about Toru's appearance, making him feel embarrassed, but Yika's mood had improved by then. Later that night, Toru noticed Yika standing in front of the boss's room. It turned out she wanted to give Kazuhiko a gift, but didn't know how to do it. At that moment, Toru sincerely encouraged Yika. Everything she did would bring joy to Kazuhiko. Thanks to Toru, Yika successfully gave a gift to her father. Toru recalls the plans he and Konami made earlier that morning. Suddenly, Yika thanks him for what he did. The next day, Kazuhiko announces that he'll visit Miyuki. Miyuki is his wife. She's currently in the hospital after a serious accident. Recently, Kazuhiko found out there have been troublemakers around the hospital. They falsely claim to be part of the Sakuragi family. This annoys Kazuhiko because of how ridiculous it is. So he orders Toru and Sugihara to take care of the situation. That evening, the two scout the surrounding areas. They soon discover shady behavior from some strangers pretending to be Yakuza. Eventually, Sugihara finds out that the impostors are just a bunch of amateurs. They were hired by someone with money. At this point, Toru still doesn't know who's behind it all, because he has way too many enemies. On another day, Yika gets the chance to go out with Toru's group. Turns out, the day before, Yika had invited Toru to a fireworks festival for the first time. So of course, Toru immediately said yes, and he temporarily paused the search for the impostors so they could spend time with Yika. While walking around, Yika noticed a cute little teddy bear. Toru quickly picked up on it and did everything he could to win it. After all his efforts, Yika finally received the teddy bear she loved. With a big smile, the three of them had a great time together. When it was time to watch the fireworks, Yika hoped she could join again next time. At that moment, both Toru and Sugihara agreed. After they returned home, Sugihara received a report about the impostors. Just in time, he and Toru arrived at the scene. They quickly caught the two fakes. During the operation, Toru thought about Yika, so he ended up letting the impostors go. Sugihara was surprised that Toru allowed them to escape. When they got home, Toru reported to Kazuhiko that he had completed the mission. Unexpectedly, Toru saw Yika sleeping on Kazuhiko's lap. Kazuhiko revealed that Yika had been waiting for Toru to return. In that moment, Toru realized that he had become a part of Yika's life. The next day, while the two were eating cookies, suddenly, Yika became curious about Toru's mother. He slowly responded. Toru's mother was a kind-hearted woman. However, Kazuhiko was confused by Yika's sudden curiosity. It turned out the last time Yika visited her mother was when she was very young. Yika would always cry whenever she saw her mother. So ever since then, Kazuhiko hadn't let Yika see her. Suddenly, Yika opened the door and entered the room. She burst into tears after overhearing their conversation. At that moment, Toru came over to comfort her. But just outside the room, Toru overheard Yika's heartfelt thoughts. It turned out Kazuhiko always wore a sad expression when visiting Miyuki. But Miyuki still hadn't woken up until now. This time, Toru gently talked to Yika. He realized that Yika had always misunderstood Miyuki. Yika thought Miyuki hated her, because she would try to talk to her and hold her hand. But Miyuki never responded. Toru gently explained the truth, and he comforted Yika with sincerity. Thanks to Toru's gentle words, Yika finally understood. She slowly ran out of the room and apologized to Kazuhiko. Yika truly wanted to see her mother. In fact, ever since Miyuki's accident, she had asked Toru to take care of both Kazuhiko and Yika. So he had always done his best. It was time for Yika to go to bed. However, Toru was surprised by Yika's compliment. Toru was shocked because it was the first time someone called him kind. But every kind action of Toru's was deeply appreciated by Yika. This time, Toru began to seriously reflect on himself. The day finally came for Yika to visit her mother. In front of Miyuki, Yika apologized for her past mistakes. Because Miyuki had been trying her best every single day, while Yika hadn't paid much attention to that, she hoped that once Miyuki woke up, they could talk a lot and share things they never knew about each other. Everyone around was touched by Yika's maturity, and she had one special gift prepared for Miyuki. It was a drawing of all the people she loved, so that Miyuki wouldn't feel lonely in that hospital room anymore. Konami was happy to see Yika's positive change. At that moment, Kazuhiko recalled the old memories of his family. He felt joyful thinking about those moments. While Toru and Yika were out buying groceries, Toru suddenly ran into Aoi. Aoi used to be a member of the Sakuragi family too. After finding out that Toru was now taking care of Yika, Aoi was shocked because the old Toru couldn't do anything but fight. At that moment, Koki, Aoi's son, greeted Yika and introduced himself. Then Yika became curious about the relationship between Kazuhiko and Aoi. It turned out that after Aoi's wife became pregnant, He left the Sakuragi family because he had something important to protect. Even so, he and Kazuhiko still maintained a good relationship. A while later, Aoi had something to do and had to leave. Before going, he was touched by Yika's sincere words. He promised he would visit her family someday. After that, he didn't hesitate to tell some embarrassing stories about Toru. When they returned to the room, Yika told Kazuhiko everything that had just happened. However, Toru could clearly tell what Kazuhiko was thinking. In truth, Aoi's departure from the Sakuragi family had left Toru feeling a bit sad. Because they were once close companions, Aoi had always put others before himself, even before thinking about his own needs. Konami noticed that Aoi's way of living was clearly reflected in Toru now. But she found it funny that Toru himself hadn't realized it at all. It was time for everyone to head home. Yika made a promise to her mother that she would come visit again next time. On the way back, on their way home, the two of them happened to come across a strange girl and a pitiful little cat. The girl looked like she hadn't eaten in a while, so Yika gave her all the bread she had. It turned out the girl was a senior in high school, but had run away from home after being scolded by her parents. Not long after, she came across a stray cat. This kind-hearted girl spent all the money she had left just to buy food for the cat. That was why she was starving. After some time, she decided to return home, but she couldn't bring herself to abandon the little cat. At that moment, Yika turned to Toru and said she wanted to take care of the cat. She promised to look after it properly. Toru wanted to know the truth. Could Yika really take care of a pet? Because it wouldn't be easy for her. But Yika was determined. She believed they were lucky to have found each other. And so, the two of them brought the cat home. Sugihara was curious about where the cat came from. The next morning, while Yika was still sound asleep, the hungry cat woke her up, meowing for food. A little later, the cat wandered to Kazuhiko's room and sat in front of his door. The cat caught his attention and tried to befriend him, and then it immediately walked away. Unfortunately, the cat ended up inside some sealed boxes by mistake. That made it recall its pitiful memories from the past. Luckily, Yika heard the sound the cat made, so she successfully rescued it. Toru and Sugihara were touched by Yika's kindness. However, the cat caused trouble for everyone, but it went to Kazuhiko and begged. That made him remember similar memories from the past. Kazuhiko informed them that currently, everyone's financial situation is declining. However, Toru and Sugihara didn't know what had happened, but Kazuhiko wanted them to seriously find proper jobs, so that everyone could improve their finances. However, Toru's group must not reveal the identity of the Sakuragi family. In order to avoid drawing attention from nearby gangs, Toru was taking Yika to school, but on the way, Yika wanted to go alone, because she noticed that Toru seemed troubled by something. Back at home, Sugihara and Toru discussed their work plans together. This time, they wanted to become popular through live streaming. However, Toru thought they would face many problems with their current job. Even so, the two of them continued to plan things out, but some small arguments arose between them. In the end, Toru finally started to take action. This time, he used a mask to hide his identity. Toru began a new job. The two of them worked hard together. In the end, they were surprised by the amount of interaction from the audience. But Toru felt worried, because he was afraid of being discovered by others. Fortunately, Sugihara handled the surrounding details. And so, they completed the job seriously. At this point, Yika became curious about everyone's strange behavior. However, there was a change in Toru's group. Everyone was determined with this new mission. After the videos Sugihara uploaded, people responded positively, and that made Toru's group's videos widely popular. Even Konami found out about them, which surprised them, although Konami still didn't know their true identities. She felt disappointed when they announced they would stop broadcasting. As for Toru's group this time, their videos became known among elementary school kids. They were worried that Yika might find out. Suddenly, Kazuhiko called the two of them into the room, which made Toru and Sugihara feel uneasy. But unexpectedly, Kazuhiko supported them in this plan, because he thought wearing a mask was a clever idea. Not only that, Kazuhiko thought they should also incorporate singing. This surprised Toru and Sugihara with such a request. In the end, they still had to follow the given plan. At this point, Toru felt uncomfortable with the outfit, but he had to accept it. When the two of them were getting ready to record, they never expected they would become this popular. But Toru continued to worry about their identities being exposed. When it was time to check their costumes, they were shocked by the situation. This time, both of them would check the music section. However, the same situation kept repeating, which made them unable to believe it was real. But Toru and Sugihara still had to stay determined to complete the mission, because neither of them could go against Kazuhiko's orders. The next day, Toru's group officially held a press conference, and the official name of the group was Team Cherry. Their purpose was to announce their music-related activities. As for Yika, she felt sad, because Toru hadn't come to pick her up from school for many days. It turned out that it was due to Toru's busy schedule. They had unexpectedly gained a huge opportunity to grow. On the flight back home, Toru thought about Yika. Unfortunately, he experienced a serious incident on the plane, but it turned out everything earlier was just a dream. After waking up, Toru saw Yika singing on the other side of the house. He was surprised by Yika's cute singing voice. On Yika's way home from school, while Toru was talking with her, he suddenly noticed the suspicious actions of two strangers. They also seemed to know Toru's true identity. Back at home, Toru felt annoyed with the task of taking care of Yika. Suddenly, a strange young man approached Toru. His name was Yanagi. Yanagi was a member of the Kusakami family. At that moment, Toru didn't pay any attention to Yanagi, which made Yanagi angry. Then Yanagi started saying some unpleasant things. His goal was to make Toru lose his temper. But contrary to Yanagi's expectations, Toru showed no emotion at all, which made Yanagi even more furious. Toru was now very different from before, because he had already handled many arrogant troublemakers. So, Toru had no shortage of enemies. However, Yanagi came up with an evil plan. The next day, Sugihara felt jealous of how close Toru and Yika were. Today was Toru's day off, so Sugihara took this chance to get closer to Yika himself. However, Sugihara's strange behavior made Yika feel embarrassed. A while later, the two of them watched a movie together. At that moment, while watching the movie, Sugihara was even more absorbed than Yika. But when Sugihara mentioned Toru, a smile suddenly appeared on Yika's face. This shocked Sugihara. He realized the closeness between her and Toru. So Sugihara accepted this reality. This time, he decided to tell her things related to Toru. As for Toru, even though it was his day off, he didn't feel like going anywhere. Suddenly, someone hugged him from behind. That guy's name was Hojo. He was Toru's close friend. Hojo ran into Toru unexpectedly after many years. He was surprised by how much Toru had changed for the better. Because back then, Toru had a cold and terrifying expression. Hojo was curious if Toru's change was due to his new workplace. And it was true. Toru thought about his friends, and especially about Yika. Suddenly, they ran into two troublemakers at a diner. So Toru gave them a lesson, which scared them off and made them run away. At that point, Toru had something to take care of, so he left early. However, on his way back, Yanagi's group came across Yika and Konami. They began plotting to mess around with them. Eventually, Yika returned home, but this time, Hinata came along too. It turned out that while Konami was out shopping, she happened to run into Hinata. So they all came home together. Today was Yika's first time baking a cake. She wanted to give that cake to Toru. Everyone happily joined in to help. In the end, the cake was finished. Hinata happily received a gift from Konami. Yika wanted to give the cake to Toru. Just in time, she ran into him, but Toru suddenly had urgent business and had to leave, which left Yika feeling disappointed inside. Meanwhile, over on Yanagi's side, they went to someone else's place to cause trouble. Unexpectedly, Toru arrived just in time, which left them frozen in shock. This time, Yanagi was genuinely frightened. Toru successfully put them in their place. On the way back, Toru ran into Yuri. He was the underboss of the Momoyama family. However, Toru didn't care about anything Yuri had to say. Toru quickly headed home. When he arrived, he immediately apologized to Yika. But by then, she had already prepared a cake to give him. Toru happily accepted the gift from Yika's hands. He was surprised to hear that she made it all by herself. Toru felt that it was the most delicious cake he'd ever had. Yika revealed that she had added more chocolate than usual, just the way Toru liked it. He He sincerely thanked Yika. Meanwhile, Hinata was secretly peeking at them from a distance. Unfortunately, Hinata slipped and fell, but a cold-looking man suddenly appeared. He managed to save Hinata in time. In the end, Sugihara wasn't allowed to eat cake at home. He had to deal with the two troublemakers earlier in place of Toru. On her way home from school, Yika remembered her birthday last year with Miss Konami. It turns out Yika's birthday is coming soon. At that moment, she saw a cake shop by the roadside. So Yika begged Toru to buy her a cake. Just then, Hojo came running toward them from afar. He kept teasing Toru, which made Toru annoyed. This time, Hojo noticed Yika. He was surprised that Toru was acting as a bodyguard for the boss's daughter. Hojo thought it was a rare situation. He slowly began to get to know Yika. At this point, Yika became curious about the relationship between Hojo and Toru. After a while, through Hojo, Yika found out they had been best friends since high school. But at that moment, Toru showed an annoyed expression. Even so, Hojo didn't care. A while later, Toru had to go out for a bit. So Hojo sat and chatted with Yika. Hojo revealed that back then, Toru never smiled. He always wore a scary expression. That's why Hojo couldn't understand why. How did Toru become so gentle? Maybe it was because of that wonderful encounter with Yika. Just then, Toru had returned. It was time for them to head back home. Before they left, Hojo grew curious about an old friend. Someone who used to fight with Toru a lot. His name was Masaya. It turns out he had just been released from prison. When they got home, Toru was excited about the gift Konami had prepared for Yika. He didn't know how Yika's birthday party would be held. It turns out she had also celebrated it here last year. But Toru didn't know that, because he used to cause trouble out in the streets. So he was rarely at home. But this year, Toru had become Yika's guardian. That's why Konami was glad they could celebrate it properly. She knew that Yika rarely invited friends over. And they both knew the reason why. At that moment, Konami was curious about Toru's preparations. However, for him, preparing for this was quite difficult. Because Toru didn't know what would make Yika truly happy. In fact, even Toru himself had never received a birthday present before in his life. However, Konami quickly came up with a suggestion for Toru. He could cook a dish by himself. Because Konami believes that cooking is an act of love, it would be the greatest gift of all. A while later, Yika went to the park to play. But Toru wasn't there. Instead, Sugihara's group was present, so on the way there, Yika looked visibly unhappy. At the park, she met another friend. Her name was Sarah. Sarah was overly cheerful, to the point that it overwhelmed Yika. Meanwhile, on Toru's side, he was at home cooking with Konami. She was teaching Toru with great care. But unfortunately, while Toru was cutting vegetables, he accidentally cut his finger. Blood poured heavily from Toru's finger. Back to Yika's side, the two of them were having fun playing together. But Yika still felt a bit strange about her overly enthusiastic friend. Even so, the two shared a joyful time together. At that moment, Sugihara was touched, because Yika finally had a friend. Back to Toru, even though he was injured, Toru was still trying to finish the dish. Konami wondered why he was doing that, but in Toru's memories, all he could think about was food. To Toru, that was the most important thing. He wanted to give Yika the best dish he had ever made. Yika's group returned home. She was happy to see Toru. He was waiting for Yika at the gate. At that moment, she noticed the wound on Toru's hand, but he quickly tried to hide it. Just then, Sarah and her father also arrived. It turned out they were the new neighbors next door to Yika's house. Suddenly, Yika and Sarah hugged each other and cheered with joy. At that moment, Kazuhiko also showed up. Yika gently asked Kazuhiko if she could invite Sarah to her upcoming birthday party. Unexpectedly, Kazuhiko gladly agreed. Today was Yika's birthday. Sarah's family happily came to celebrate with her. Everyone was surprised by Sarah's father's enthusiasm. As for Sarah, she was surprised by how many people were at Yika's house. At that moment, the two of them played and explored together. Because everything around them was valuable. It made Sugihara's group nervous. So they all went looking together. The energy of Yika and Sarah left Sugihara's group exhausted. At that moment, Yika thought it was a magical encounter that filled her and everyone around with happiness. Yika's birthday today became the most unforgettable day. After everyone left, Toru suddenly brought the homemade dish to Yika. She thanked him and happily tasted the food he made. At the same time, Toru remembered his past memories with his mother, which helped him understand the meaning of happiness. After getting out of prison, Masaya continued his evil deeds. This time, Masaya wanted to confront Toru. But right now, Toru had no time, because he was busy taking care of a sweet little girl. Masaya couldn't believe it was true. It turned out that in the past, Masaya had been beaten badly by Toru. Since then, Masaya had always wanted to defeat him. Suddenly, Toru and Yika appeared from behind. It surprised Masaya. However, Toru still didn't recognize the person in front of him. That made Masaya annoyed. He thought Toru wasn't supposed to be like this. Just then, Hojo also showed up, so Toru asked him to watch over Yika. But Hojo immediately recognized Masaya. He brought up old memories with Toru. Only then did Toru realize it was Masaya. Back when all three were in high school, they were all isolated individuals. Hojo was surprised that Masaya was also involved with a gang. At that moment, Masaya revealed that he had been searching everywhere for Toru to get revenge. However, the current Toru was a completely different person. He didn't want to be affected by Masaya anymore. Luckily, Masaya's boss arrived in time to pull him away, because he didn't want to cause trouble with the Sakuragi family. In the afternoon, Sugihara followed Toru's instructions. He went to Kuno's office and met with the director. It turned out they were trying to build a cooperative relationship between the two sides. While the two were discussing, Sugihara noticed that the contract between them was fake. He realized the director of Kuno had intended to commit fraud. This left the director flustered. The director said Sugihara was just a copy of Toru. But Sugihara quickly took care of the conman. On the way back in the car, Sugihara was irritated by the director's words. Suddenly, he remembered his past. Back then, Sugihara was a petty thief. During one of his heists, he unfortunately ran into Toru. Toru figured out Sugihara's intentions. So Sugihara panicked and ran away. But because of Sugihara's bad behavior, his parents cut off their relationship with him. That left Sugihara completely alone. But it was Toru who saved his life. From that moment on, Sugihara decided to follow Toru for life. As for that shady director, the one behind him was actually Yuri. Thanks to him, Yuri learned a lot of useful information. Sarah became a new student in Yika's class. Yika admired Sarah's talent for making friends. When she got home, Aoi came to visit Kazuhiko's family. Koki immediately started playing with Yika. At that moment, Toru noticed that Aoi seemed anxious. However, Toru calmed Aoi's emotions. Finally, the two met face to face. Kazuhiko gently greeted Aoi, which moved him deeply. Aoi apologized for coming after such a long time. However, he never expected to see the life Kazuhiko had now. Kazuhiko already knew Aoi would have trouble keeping up with his changes. Aoi also noticed the positive change in Toru. He had learned to control his anger. Kazuhiko was very happy about that change. Compared to the past, Toru had become much more mature. About 8 years ago, when Miyuki was pregnant, her relationship with Kazuhiko was very happy. The two of them looked forward to the day their baby would be born. Miyuki wished the baby would be kind and strong. However, Toru kept causing trouble. He often picked fights with members of other gangs. So Aoi had to scold Toru loudly every day, which made Kazuhiko irritated. But Miyuki was the opposite. She cherished everyone around her, because they were all part of Kazuhiko's heartfelt efforts. Back to the present, Aoi was surprised by how much Yika had grown, because she was getting older day by day. Aoi also learned about Miyuki's current health condition, because he had met Konami at the hospital. So both of them felt sad about it. Aoi revealed that when he looked at Kazuhiko's family, he had always admired the idea of having a real family. He cherished every member of that family. When Aoi's wife became pregnant, her name was Sane. Sane could feel how much Aoi cared, especially about his small family within the Sakuragi family. Aoi was touched by Sane's acceptance of both his past and the Sakuragi family. However, during their next mission, Aoi and Toru were in danger. Aoi ended up with a serious injury, which made Sane, who was pregnant, very worried. Unfortunately, her health condition also became unstable. The reason was that Sane felt anxious over Aoi's small troubles. It caused her to become exhausted. So Aoi decided to leave the Sakuragi family, so that he could protect his own little family. Kazuhiko thought it was the right thing for Aoi to do. Sanae was moved by Aoi's decision. Thanks to that choice, Aoi finally realized that the one thing he truly needed to protect was his family. In the end, Aoi once again thanked Kazuhiko. At that moment, Aoi couldn't believe that his son was actually playing with Yika. It was something that wasn't easy to achieve. Aoi also didn't expect that Toru would be the one taking care of Yika. Because in the past, Toru rarely even came home. His body was always covered in injuries. When Aoi left the Sakuragi family, he felt as if he had abandoned his responsibility toward Toru. So Aoi always carried a sense of guilt. But from now on, he probably wouldn't feel that way anymore. In the end, everyone happily said their goodbyes. Toru told Yika that she had made another new friend. Back at school, Yika watched everyone playing together. But she couldn't find a way to join them. So she returned to her drawing. Suddenly, she noticed someone behind her having trouble. The girl's name was Akashi. Thanks to Yika's gentle care and kindness, Akashi asked to be friends with her. In the end, the two of them happily drew pictures together. Yika felt happy for these chance encounters, which brought her so much joy. The next day arrived. Toru was curious and didn't understand what was happening. But he saw that Yika looked excited. Toru thought she was looking forward to something. On Sugihara's side, he also had a secret plan prepared for Toru. However, Sugihara spoke too loudly, drawing Toru's attention to Sugihara's group. At this point, Toru had no idea what was going on with everyone. Just then, Kazuhiko needed to talk to Toru. Toru asked Kazuhiko about Yika. This time, it was Sugihara's group's turn. They tried to keep a distance between Toru and Yika, which made Toru annoyed. Kazuhiko reminded Toru, while he was taking care of Yika, he had to be mindful when dealing with his subordinates. He had to be gentle and kind, so that Yika could see it. It turned out that everyone was secretly celebrating Toru's birthday. Konami personally prepared many dishes. Today's plans were all Yika's ideas, and everyone worked together in secret. This made Toru deeply moved. At that moment, Yika gave Toru a drawing of him. Sugihara's group was happy because they completed the mission. Then Yika tried Toru's favorite dish. Just then, Konami brought out a childhood gift of Yika's. It was meme, which made her excited. It was a gift Kazuhiko had given to Yika. Unexpectedly, the one who bought meme was actually Toru. But that time, Toru accidentally bought a piece of lamb meat instead, which made the whole family burst out laughing. Konami recalled the memory of Kazuhiko's first visit there. Back then, it was the first time he came with Miyuki. Since it was the first time, Konami felt a bit nervous, to the point that she poured the drink and it overflowed. This time, Kazuhiko recalled his first memories of meeting Miyuki. Miyuki was a good girl. Even though she was just a student, she tried to work part-time at a flower shop. At that time, she accidentally bumped into a stranger. Unexpectedly, that person was Kazuhiko. The two of them talked together about flowers and plants. A few days later, Kazuhiko came to the shop again. This time, Miyuki took the initiative to ask him about flower arranging. However, she felt there wasn't enough time. So Miyuki gave Kazuhiko her contact information. The two of them made a plan to meet the next day. At the meeting spot, Miyuki kept getting shy because of Kazuhiko's words. At that moment, Miyuki focused her attention. She saw that Kazuhiko was a gentle person. But Miyuki's awkwardness was the most adorable thing about her. The two of them had a fun and cheerful conversation. When it was time for them to go home, Miyuki forgot to ask about flower arranging, because she was too caught up in talking. Kazuhiko chuckled for a moment. Then he gave Miyuki his contact information. The two of them promised to meet again another time. Returning to the present, Konami was happy that everyone had a chance to gather. Because such moments hadn't happened since Miyuki's accident. That made Konami truly joyful. Last year, Toru had been busy with many things. But this year, he could slowly enjoy his birthday. Toru felt happy because of Yika's small gestures. Suddenly, he realized it had been a while since he became a babysitter. Everyone had gone through so much together. Yika got to see her mother again after many years. She also made many new friends. At that moment, Yika was curious about Toru. Toru thought he would have to work even harder this year. He still had many goals to achieve. The most important thing was that Toru tried not to make Yika sad. Because he really liked Yika's smile. Her smile made those around her feel happy too. So, as Yika's babysitter, Toru would always try to make her smile every day. The next day, Yika happily went to the park to play with her friends. Even though everyone was tired, they all joined in for Yika's sake. As a result, everyone felt relaxed today, especially because of Toru. That's why Yika was even happier than usual. When they got home, Sugihara revealed that he liked the time when Toru was a babysitter. Because during that time, he really acted like a proper person. However, that comment made Toru angry. He immediately gave Sugihara a light smack on the head. At that moment, Kazuhiko wondered about their argument. Sugihara quickly explained that Toru was on his way to pick up Yika. And Sugihara was just getting used to the situation, since Toru rarely came home. At that moment, Kazuhiko didn't deny it either. He thought Toru had become more human. On Yika's side, she was waiting for Toru to come pick her up. Unexpectedly, Yika ran into a strange man. At the same time, Toru encountered two other strangers blocking his way. He didn't know who they were. But they, on the other hand, clearly remembered how Toru had treated them before. At that moment, Yika was with the strange man. She was worried about Toru facing those bad people. Unfortunately, Yika ended up in danger right then. So Toru couldn't forgive them. He quickly took care of those villains. Just before Toru could do something truly ruthless. Fortunately, Yika managed to stop him in time. In the end, Toru brought Yika to the hospital for care. He sincerely apologized to Kazuhiko for everything that had just happened. At that moment, Kazuhiko reminded Toru of his next action. First and foremost, Toru's duty was to be Yika's babysitter. The rest would be handled by the Sakuragi family. Toru should do what Yika wants the most. And that is to see Toru when she wakes up. At that moment, Toru walked away. On the way, he happened to pass by Masaya. It caught Masaya's attention. He didn't hesitate to attack Toru. However, Toru didn't care about what just happened. That surprised Masaya. He continued to chase after Toru. But Toru still ignored him and kept walking. At home, Sugihara had already learned the identities of those who attacked Yika. According to Kazuhiko, that gang had been defeated by Toru 10 years ago. So they came back for revenge. However, Toru had already entered their territory. He kept attacking them relentlessly. At that moment, Yuri observed everything from above. Fortunately, Kazuhiko arrived just in time to stop Toru. Kazuhiko scolded him severely. Toru's current mission is to be by Yika's side. Kazuhiko was furious because Toru didn't listen to him. But Toru thought that he hadn't changed at all. Toru was still the demon of the Sakuragi family. However, Kazuhiko immediately denied that. He emphasized that right now, Toru is someone responsible for taking care of others. It left Toru completely stunned. At that moment, Yika woke up. She burst into tears when she saw Toru. Toru quickly apologized to Yika for letting her go through such a frightening experience. This time, Toru slowly collapsed to the ground. Perhaps he had finally let go of all his tension. The next day, even though Yika got a few days off from school, she still diligently finished all her assigned homework. Today, Toru would spend the whole day with Yika. Toru was curious about what activities Yika wanted to do. At that moment, she wanted to go to the fireworks festival. But unfortunately, the festival had already ended. Unexpectedly, Toru decided to organize one himself. That made Yika really excited. However, Toru wouldn't make it a grand festival, but he would invite friends and everyone to join. In the end, Yika had a great time with her friends. Everyone spent lots of time together. Eventually, they all fell asleep. The next morning, Sugihara panicked when he saw a message from Toru. Toru was going to leave. Kazuhiko also found out about it. Toru sincerely begged Kazuhiko. He wanted to leave the Sakuragi family before he lost the things most precious to him. Kazuhiko tried to stop him, but Toru had already walked away quickly. At that moment, Yika learned the truth. She showed a sad expression. Even Sugihara didn't understand what Toru was doing. As for Toru, he was alone in a desolate place. Toru recalled Kazuhiko's words before he left. Kazuhiko advised Toru to do what he truly wanted, but he told him never to choose the wrong path. Meanwhile, Yuri was excited about the Sakuragi family's situation. At home, Sugihara noticed Yika looking sad. He couldn't bear to see her like that. So Sugihara decided to go look for Toru. This time, Yika also wanted to join. Sugihara hesitated because he was worried about her. In the end, the two decided to take action. At that moment, Yuri was approaching Toru. He realized that Toru's true self was still there. Yuri wanted to form a gang with Toru. He wanted to use Toru so Yuri could carry out his own evil deeds. This time, Toru thought maybe Yuri had been behind everything. But Toru couldn't do anything to stop him. Night fell. Coincidentally, Toru and Aoi ran into each other. However, Aoi realized that something bad had happened to Toru. But Aoi advised him to choose what he truly wanted to do. At that moment, Yika came running from afar. She was so emotional that she immediately hugged Toru. Sugihara followed behind. He was angry about Toru's actions. Sugihara couldn't stay calm, so he said everything that was on his mind. Because Toru was someone Sugihara had always respected. He hoped Toru wouldn't do things like he did before. At that moment, Sugihara burst into tears. Everything finally came to an end. The next day, Toru and Sugihara got into a loud argument, which made Kazuhiko furious. At that moment, Aoi also showed up. He himself was annoyed by how noisy they all were. But Aoi saw that Sugihara was a kind person. He knew Sugihara had been through a lot lately. Because the old Toru always made people worry. At that moment, Aoi asked about Yika. He knew that Yika had been scared after being attacked. But on the other hand, Yika knew that Toru cared about her a lot. Because when they arrived at the hospital, Toru burst into loud tears. Everyone teamed up to tease Toru, which made him flustered and unsure of what to do. Yika begged Kazuhiko for permission to visit Aoi's house. Kazuhiko agreed, but only on the condition that Toru had to go with her. The next day, both of them showed up just as promised. Koki was happy to see Yika. Sane warmly welcomed them as well. She was amazed by Yika's cuteness. Then, Yika was surprised by how cute the cake was. The cake was specially prepared by Sane, because she knew that Yika loved cats. At that moment, Koki started teasing Yika, which made Aoi unexpectedly angry. So the two of them got noisy, causing Hina to wake up and start crying. At that moment, Yika slowly approached Hina. However, Hina seemed to like Yika. So when Yika stayed beside her, Hina immediately calmed down and smiled again. Because she thought Yika was a kind and gentle big sister. As for Yika, she was really looking forward to seeing Hina grow up. The two of them were sure they would have fun playing together. The kids were surprised by how close Toru and Aoi were. At that moment, Sane revealed that it felt like things were going back to how they used to be. Because back then, the two of them had been very close. Suddenly, Aoi showed everyone some old photo memories. That's when Yika saw a picture of herself as a child, sleeping beside Toru. Aoi remembered that time. It was when Toru came home covered in injuries, after getting into a fight with someone. At that time, Kazuhiko had forbidden Toru from leaving the house. Now Toru also remembered that moment. He had been so badly injured that Konami ran out of all her first aid supplies. That day, Toru wasn't allowed to go outside, so he felt bored since everyone else had gone out. Just then, he saw baby Yika waking up. The two of them had a great time playing together. By the afternoon, Yika had fallen asleep on Toru's lap. He remembered the words Miyuki had told him back then. Returning to the present, the two of them were on their way home. Just then, Yika spotted a flower shop. So she and Toru decided to go inside. Yika wanted to buy flowers to give to her mother. After talking to the staff, they were surprised to find out that the flower also held memories for Toru. In the past, Toru and his mother used to take care of it every day. In the end, they decided to buy that bouquet. The next day, Toru brought the bouquet to visit his mother. Her grave was always full of fresh flowers, because she had loved them when she was alive. The reason was their cuteness and beauty. Moreover, every flower carries its own special meaning. These meanings depend on each person's perspective. As people grow and mature, Toru shared his thoughts with his mother. He never thought he would one day be able to take care of someone else. From someone so reckless like himself, he had finally become a better person. Through Yika, Toru had come to realize many things. Now, he would focus on his own happiness, and the happiness of everyone around him, especially Yika. That's it for today's video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support Oni-chan in future videos. Thank you for watching. Much love always.